Before we dive into tonight's mystery, hit subscribe and drop a like. It keeps the channel alive. Blackwater Reach was a seaside town, cramped harbor leaning cottages, one road up the hill to Greyshore House, a stone villa over the water. It belonged to Helena Ward. Once she was a famous stage actress in London and New York. Then she disappeared to America and stopped answering questions. Months ago, she turned up here, bought the villa and shut herself away. Tonight, her gate was open. In the drawing room, a piano recording played under the tick of a clock. Lamps lit old playbills and photographs. Helena stood at the window, looking at the dark sea. Her black dress and pearls were flawless. Only her fingers betrayed her, tapping the glass. "One last performance," she murmured. "After tonight, maybe I'll sleep." Headlights climbed the drive. The bell rang. Quiet turned into footsteps and low voices in the hall. Her guests were few. Dr. Elias Harrow, his niece Amelia, Julian Pike, a corporate lawyer, and Rowan Drake, a retired private investigator. Coats were taken, glasses poured. Helena moved between them with easy charm, asking about journeys and work. She gave away nothing about herself. Only Amelia watched her too closely. They ate in a mirrored dining room. Candlelight bounced off glass and silver. Conversation stayed polite: patience, cases, travel, the storm over the water. Rowan let the others talk. Amelia listened to the silences. When the plates were cleared, Helena rose and lifted her glass. "My friends," she said, "thank you for coming. I've lived too long with a truth that doesn't belong in any script. Perhaps tonight it finally leaves this house." Julian snorted softly. "Careful, truth and dessert rarely get along." Laughter circled the table. Amelia saw Helena's hand tremble before the glass touched her lips. "If you'll excuse me," Helena said a little later, "I'd like to change before dessert." Her heels clicked up the stairs. The sound faded. 10 minutes passed, then 15. In the kitchen, Nora the housekeeper checked the time. "I'll see if Miss Ward needs anything," she said. On the landing upstairs, Nora knocked on the bedroom door. "Miss Ward, dessert is ready." No reply. She knocked again. "Miss Ward," silence. She turned the handle. The door opened. A bedside lamp burned. One window was open a crack, letting in cold air and the dull roar of the sea. Helena Ward lay on the floor near the window, black dress spread around her, eyes staring at the ceiling. By her hand lay the shattered remains of a small brown vial. On the table beside the bed stood a half-finished glass of white wine and a folded note. Nora's scream shook the house. Inspector Marlowe arrived with 2 officers. The guests waited outside the bedroom. Marlowe stepped inside, took in the body, the glass, the vial, the note. He opened the paper. It held one line: "It's too heavy to live with. Forgive me." The younger officer at the door cleared his throat. "Looks like suicide, sir." Rowan Drake stood by the open window. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe someone in this house just wrote Helena Ward's final scene for her." Inspector Marlowe called Elias to the bedside. The doctor checked Helena's pupils, her pulse, the smell above the wineglass. When he straightened, his answer was ready. "Cyanide," he said. "There's a faint almond scent, quick and deliberate." "So not a handful of pills and a bad night," Marlowe replied. Julian remarked that Helena had always staged her exits. If she wanted to die, she would choose her scene. Rowan didn't argue. He had walked to the window. The frame was chipped. On the sill he saw a greasy half-print and a dusting of brown specks the same color as the shattered vial. "Someone handled that bottle here," he said. "Not Helena. Her fingers wouldn't reach this far." Marlowe leaned closer. "Or someone checked the yard before walking away. Either way, those prints go to the lab." From the doorway, Nora whispered that Helena kept all medicine in a locked drawer and never let anyone else near it. Tonight, someone had. Marlowe cleared the room and took everyone to the drawing room. The piano was silent. Rain and the clock filled the gaps. Their stories, when he took them, matched too well. After Helena left the table, they all claimed to stay downstairs, drifting between dining room and fire. No one admitted going upstairs. No one admitted touching her glass. Elias kept his answers clipped. Amelia spoke as little as possible. Julian sounded like he was on the witness stand. Rowan watched the pauses, not the words. "For now," Marlowe said, closing his notebook, "no one leaves Blackwater Reach. We'll wait for the lab. Helena's papers may talk louder." In the gray morning, Greyshore House looked older. Officers moved through Helena's study, dragging out boxes and folders. Marlowe and Rowan took the desk. Most of what they found was theater, contracts, fan letters, marked-up scripts. Then a thin stack of bank papers shifted the air. A week before the dinner, Helena had withdrawn £100,000 in cash. "Not exactly a farewell gesture," Rowan said. "You don't take that much out if you plan to be a corpse by the window." Behind the statement lay an envelope in Helena's hand. "If anything happens to me." Inside, one line: "If I am found dead, look first at those who shared my table tonight." So she expected someone at that table to be trouble, Marlowe said. Or she wanted us tied to them. By afternoon, the harbor was humming with rumors, poison, lovers, old debts. At the station, Marlowe tried to ignore the noise and fix the times. Near dusk, a constable arrived with a boy from the pier, cap twisting in his hands. His name was Tom. Around 9 the night before, just after the church bell finished ringing, he had been slipping along the lane by Greyshore's gate, hurrying home. From the hedge, he saw Dr. Elias Harrow leave the drive, walking fast toward town with a bag like a doctor's case. The doctor never looked his way. Marlowe compared that to Harrow's neat version of the evening, in which he had stayed inside Greyshore House until Nora screamed. He shut his notebook. "Well," he said, Rowan's mouth curved. "First crack," he said. "And the thing about cracks, Inspector, they don't usually stop at one." Morning came to Blackwater Reach under low clouds and a wet wind. Greyshore House felt hollow, voices dropped, footsteps softened. The idea of bitter almonds still seemed to cling to the stairs. Inspector Marlowe set his notebook on a side table in the drawing room. Dr. Elias Harrow sat opposite, back straight, hands locked together. "Again," Marlowe said, "from the moment Helena left the table." "I stayed downstairs," Elias replied, "in the sitting room. I read an old journal until Nora screamed. Then I went up with the others." Marlowe flicked a page. "Tom from the harbor puts you outside the gate with a bag around 9. He remembers the church bell finishing." Elias' jaw tightened. "He's mistaken. I stepped out later, closer to 10:30, to clear my head. I often move my case from the car. That boy is chasing shadows." Rowan, in a chair near the fireplace, spoke without looking up. "Kids remember nights by sounds, not clocks. If he ties you to the bell, he's not guessing." Marlowe slid a sheet across. "Officers found an old medical case in Helena's cellar. The lab says the residue on it matches the compound in the shattered vial upstairs. Your initials are on the metal tag." Elias' eyes flashed. "I've handled restricted substances for years. Traces linger. An abandoned bag with dust on it proves nothing about last night." "Maybe not," Rowan said, "but it proves the line between your work and her glass isn't as clean as you claimed." When Elias finally left, shoulders stiff, Amelia watched him go, then drifted toward the back of the house. A few minutes later, she slipped outside. The garden was slick from rain, hedges dripping, stone path dark. She stopped by the small iron gazebo, hugging her arms. "You're not defending him because you're sure he's innocent," Rowan's voice came from behind. "You're defending him because if he falls, you've got no one left." She turned. "You don't know anything about me." He stepped close enough to hand her a photograph. Helena did. The small framed picture showed Helena younger, hair loose, in a simple blouse. Beside her stood a girl in a headset and crew badge, leaning against a trailer. On the back, in Helena's hand, Lowe's Angels 10 years ago. The girl was Amelia. I found it in Helena's room, Rowan said. So you weren't just the shy niece from the city, you worked for her. Amelia stared at the image. One summer, she said. She put me on her set when I'd run away and had nowhere to sleep. She called it saving me. What ended it? We fought, Amelia answered. About a project. About what she was willing to cover up and what I was willing to risk. She told me to leave. I did. We never spoke again. Until she invited you here, Rowan said, and you came. Amelia looked toward the strip of gray sea. She knew too much, she murmured. About my uncle, about the trials he ran, about what I agreed to do back then. Helena Ward never forgot leverage. Rowan watched her. Then her death didn't just erase a secret, he said softly. It erased the one woman who could still drag your past into the light. By late afternoon, the storm from the sea was shaking Greyshore House. Inspector Marlowe came back from the station with a thin folder. Rowan met him on the stairs. Lab result, Marlowe said. Concentrated cyanide in the wine, glass wiped clean. This wasn't panic. It was planned. In Helena's study, officers were emptying drawers when a constable handed over a flash drive. On Helena's laptop, it held one audio file dated 3 days before the dinner. Click. Helena's voice, strained but steady. You will not silence me again. A woman answered cold. If you talk, they lose everything. Him, her, you know that. Helena replied, I'm done being threatened, and the recording cut. Not Harrow, not Pike, Marlowe muttered. She was fighting with a woman. Rowan's answer was short. Which gives us Amelia or Nora. Before they could choose, Nora appeared in the doorway, twisting her apron. She said that on the night Helena died, she'd brought a tray to the study and heard her shouting on the phone. I won't let you ruin them. Then the slam of the receiver. Pressed, Nora admitted the other voice sounded like Miss Amelia, though she wouldn't swear to it. Marlowe's reply was simple. Bring Amelia to the library. Amelia sat under the tall windows with Helena's photograph in her hands. Marlowe played the recording. When it ended, she said, That isn't me. She sounds older, colder. I fall apart when I'm scared. To Marlowe's reminder that Nora heard Helena shout her name, Amelia snapped. She heard Helena shouting, not the line you're pinning on me. I didn't call that night. Rowan asked who Helena meant by them. My uncle and me, Amelia replied. But the person squeezing her wasn't here. When Marlowe pushed for a name, she gave it, Julian Pike. Helena, she said, had kept files linking Julian to the fund that paid for the drug trials which destroyed her family. Helena had threatened to go public. Julian had warned she would regret it. When Julian Pike entered the study, rain hammered the windows. Marlowe told him they'd heard his call with Helena. Julian claimed she had phoned him and been emotional. Rowan cut in. Helena saved emotion for the stage. On the phone, she used sharp words. Under pressure, Julian admitted they had argued about documents from an old case and that he'd told her exposing them would hurt people who'd already paid enough. Asked where he'd been when Helena went upstairs, Julian said he was in the drawing room talking with Amelia. From the doorway, Amelia corrected him. The conversation had lasted a minute, then she left and he stayed. So you had the window, Rowan said, time to follow her and pour one last glass. Julian spread his hands. And that's your story. Marlowe tapped the flash drive. For now, he said, they had motive, threats, and a hole in Julian's timeline, enough to keep him at the center. Julian straightened his tie. Then don't forget who wrote the opening scene, he said. Helena Ward lived on misdirection. If she wanted you staring at me, she left you every reason to. His glance slid to Rowan. And my guess, her last act isn't over. We're all still reading our lines. The next morning, the town woke to clear light and stale gossip, but Greyshore House felt heavier than the weather. Officers moved quietly. Inspector Marlowe had just sat down with bad coffee when a constable appeared holding a damp envelope in a gloved hand. "This came in the Morning Post, sir. Addressed to Miss Ward. Postmark from yesterday, after she died." The front carried Helena's name and the house. No return address. Marlowe slid it open. Inside was a single sheet written in a sharp, practiced hand. "I did what you asked. They'll believe it was your choice. The debts are covered. Don't contact me again." Rowan read over his shoulder. "E for Elias," he said, "or a very on-the-nose coincidence." They brought Harrow into the drawing room. He looked drained, collar slightly askew. "I never wrote that," he said after reading the letter. "Someone forged my hand." "Not your name," Marlowe replied, "just your initial. The lab will argue about the rest." Elias shook his head. Helena wasn't the type to ask for help dying. If she wanted out, she'd walk into the sea alone. "Unless," Rowan said, "she wanted to leave behind a story that cleared someone she still cared about." For a heartbeat, the doctor's control slipped. "She didn't care about me," he said too quickly. "Not for a long time." Marlowe set a photograph on the table. Helena younger, laughing in a hospital corridor beside a man in a white coat. Elias Harrow without gray, his arm brushing her back. Underneath, in Helena's looping script, "For the second chance." So you weren't just her local doctor," Marlowe said. "You were there before the spotlight." "She was my patient," Elias answered. "Before Blackwater, before the stage. I approved a trial that hurt her more than it helped. She forgave me, I didn't." "Anything else?" Rowan asked. "We tried to build something after," Elias said. "Guilt doesn't make good foundations." Marlowe tapped the letter. "If Helena asked you to help stage her death as suicide to tidy old damage, would you have agreed?" "No," Elias said. "I'd have tried to stop her, and if she ignored me, I'd never have put my part on paper." When he was gone, Rowan studied the page again. "If it's genuine," he said, "Helena rehearsed this ending with him. If it's fake, someone knows enough about their history to weaponize his initial." "Either way," Marlowe answered, "we're stuck in the same triangle. Harrow, Pike, Amelia, all wired into the same piece of history Helena was sitting on." Rowan drifted to the window. The sea glittered in pale blue. Down by the small pier, a figure stood at the end of the boards, motionless, staring up at the house. Narrow shoulders, long coat. "Speaking of ghosts," Rowan murmured. By the time he reached the shore path, the figure had gone, leaving only footprints on the wet planks. The prints were narrow. The heel on the right shoe wore down on the inside edge, exactly like the shoes Amelia had worn to dinner. Rowan looked back at Greyshore House. A light burned in one of the guest rooms. "Running won't help," he said quietly. "Helena already wrote you into the script." By late afternoon, Marlowe had everyone confined inside Greyshore House. The storm had passed, but the air felt heavier. Doors clicked softly, voices dropped. Rowan found Amelia in her room, staring at a small, battered audio recorder on the dresser. "You've been holding out on us," he said. "I was holding out on myself," she answered. "Keeping this felt easier than playing it." She pressed play. Helena's voice. "Elias, if she finds out, you'll lose her. Tell Amelia the truth before someone else does." Then Elias Harrow. "She can't know, not now, not after everything I've done to keep her out." A dull impact, a gasp, then static. Amelia's hands shook. Recorded the night before she died, she was pushing him. He still chose secrets. "It proves fear, not poison," Rowan said. "Cowards lie long before they kill." Before she could answer, Marlowe filled the doorway. "Both of you, study, now." The study was lit by a single lamp. Julian Pike stood by the shelves, arms folded. Elias Harrow waited near the desk, gray with fatigue. Nora hovered by the door. On the blotter lay a worn notebook. "Helena's journal," Marlowe said. "Last pages." Rowan read the cramped lines at the back. "EH still hiding the trial. A doesn't know, she should. JP wants it buried, says the fund will fall. If I speak, one of them may panic. Maybe enough to kill. Elias shut his eyes. Julian muttered that Helena dramatized everything. Amelia said quietly, she was the only one willing to say what happened. Marlowe lifted an evidence bag with Helena's wine bottle. Nora, your prints are here. She asked for it every night, Nora said. One glass before bed. I carried the bottle up, that's all. Rowan nodded toward a second bag. Inside lay another stemmed glass, badly rinsed. A faint red stain clung to the base. Helena drank white, Rowan said. Someone else poured red. Julian stiffened. I had a glass downstairs. Amelia shook her head. You offered, I refused. Then I left you alone. Silence. Which gives you a gap, Marlowe told Julian. Time to follow her. Julian's jaw worked. I didn't poison her, he said at last, but I did go up. Elias stared. You said you never left the ground floor. She invited me, Julian replied, to talk about files she kept on me. Her door was shut. I knocked. No answer. I walked away. Or she was already on the floor, Rowan said. Julian reached into his pocket and set a small brass key on the desk. For her safe, he said. She gave it to me weeks ago, told me to destroy anything tying us to the trials. I didn't. The safe is still locked. Why mention it now? Marlowe asked. Because whatever's in there, Julian answered. She meant someone to find after she was gone, and I'm done being the neat suspect. Rowan glanced at the key, then at the painting behind the desk that hid a wall safe. Well, he said, let's see what scene she left for us. The room held its breath as Marlowe lifted the frame aside and turned the key in the lock. The safe door opened with a metallic sigh. Inside, envelopes, a flash drive, and a folder labeled in Helena's hand. Trial 12B. Marlowe took the folder. Medical reports, payment records, clipped emails. 3 names repeated. Harrow, Pike, Ward. On the last page, a consent form carried a familiar surname. Amelia's sister. Amelia's breath hitched. Elias stepped forward, then stopped. Rowan said, she didn't just die of illness. The trial killed her. Elia's voice was rough. I pulled Amelia out. I failed the older girl. Helena kept the proof. Julian's gaze slid to the flash drive. That's the money trail. One leak and a few careers go under. Marlowe sealed the drive. Helena's went under first. At the back of the safe lay one more envelope, black wax intact. On the front, if I am gone, read this with them all present. Rowan broke the seal and read. Elias, your trial destroyed my future, but you tried to mend what you broke. Julian, you feared truth more than ruin. Amelia, you ran from the past until it caught up. I loved you differently, and each of you hurt me differently. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of what you'll do to dodge yourselves. If my ending forces you to face what we did, let it be the last scene I direct. Rowan folded the page. Not a suicide note, he said. She knew someone would strike. Julian snapped. It still doesn't say who poisoned her. Maybe she did, Elias whispered. Helena hated quiet exits, Rowan replied. She wouldn't choose cyanide alone by a window. Marlowe turned to Amelia. Where were you when she left the table? In the hall, she said. I cried. I didn't go upstairs. Someone did, Rowan said, looking at Nora. The housekeeper flinched. I only brought the wine, she whispered, same as every night. You were outside after the police left, Rowan said. Why? She gave me a letter, Nora answered. Told me to post it if anything happened. Said it might protect them. Her look flicked to Elias, Amelia, Julian. Did she ever tell you to change her drink? Marlowe asked. Never, Nora said. She just said, if someone harms me, the truth is locked away. Make sure they find it, Rowan exhaled. She didn't script her death, she scripted this. Julian gave a thin laugh. Of course she did. Marlowe lifted Trial 12B. Only one of you built a career on burying files like this, he said, and knew enough to swap a vial and walk away. His eyes fixed on Julian. Julian raised his chin. You're guessing. You needed Helena quiet before this surfaced, Rowan said. You knew Nora's routine with the wine. You didn't have to go upstairs with poison. You just had to make sure the bottle she used was already prepared. Nora stared at Julian. You changed it in the kitchen. Julian didn't answer. Marlowe stepped forward with cuffs. Julian Pike, you're under arrest on suspicion of Helena Ward's murder. As they let him out, Nora covered her face. Amelia leaned into Elia's. Rowan closed the safe. Helena got what she wanted, he said. Maybe not justice, but the truth. Outside, the sea rolled on. Inside Greyshore House, the play was over. The safe door opened with a metallic sigh. Inside, envelopes, a flash drive, and a folder labeled in Helena's hand. Trial 12B. Marlowe took the folder. Medical reports, payment records, clipped emails. 3 names repeated: Harrow, Pike, Ward. On the last page, a consent form carried a familiar surname. Amelia's sister. Amelia's breath hitched. Elia stepped forward, then stopped. Rowan said, she didn't just die of illness. The trial killed her. Elia's voice was rough. I pulled Amelia out. I failed the older girl. Helena kept the proof. Julian's gaze slid to the flash drive. That's the money trail. One leak and a few careers go under. Marlowe sealed the drive. Helena's went under first. At the back of the safe lay one more envelope, black wax intact. On the front, if I am gone, read this with them all present. Rowan broke the seal and read, Elias, your trial destroyed my future, but you tried to mend what you broke. Julian, you feared truth more than ruin. Amelia, you ran from the past until it caught up. I loved you differently, and each of you hurt me differently. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of what you'll do to dodge yourselves. If my ending forces you to face what we did, let it be the last scene I direct. Rowan folded the page. Not a suicide note, he said. She knew someone would strike. Julian snapped. It still doesn't say who poisoned her. Maybe she did, Elias whispered. Helena hated quiet exits, Rowan replied. She wouldn't choose cyanide alone by a window. Marlowe turned to Amelia. Where were you when she left the table? In the hall, she said. I cried. I didn't go upstairs. Someone did, Rowan said, looking at Nora. The housekeeper flinched. I only brought the wine, she whispered, same as every night. You were outside after the police left, Rowan said. Why? She gave me a letter, Nora answered. Told me to post it if anything happened. Said it might protect them. Her look flicked to Elias, Amelia, Julian. Did she ever tell you to change her drink? Marlowe asked. Never, Nora said. She just said, if someone harms me, the truth is locked away. Make sure they find it, Rowan exhaled. She didn't script her death, she scripted this. Julian gave a thin laugh. Of course she did. Marlowe lifted trial 12B. Only one of you built a career on burying files like this, he said, and knew enough to swap a vial and walk away. His eyes fixed on Julian. Julian raised his chin. You're guessing. You needed Helena quiet before this surfaced, Rowan said. You knew Nora's routine with the wine. You didn't have to go upstairs with poison. You just had to make sure the bottle she used was already prepared. Nora stared at Julian. You changed it in the kitchen. Julian didn't answer. Marlowe stepped forward with cuffs. Julian Pike, you're under arrest on suspicion of Helena Ward's murder. As they let him out, Nora covered her face. Amelia leaned into Elia's. Rowan closed the safe. Helena got what she wanted, he said. Maybe not justice, but the truth. Outside, the sea rolled on. Inside Greyshore House, the play was over.